Notice your jaw right now.
Notice your shoulders, pulled up near your ears without you asking them to. Maybe you're holding your phone, waiting for one text to decide your whole night. That clench, the one you barely register anymore, is costing you more than you think. Here's the trap. You assume the only alternative to gripping is giving up. Letting go feels like surrender. But there's an old idea, quiet and specific, that says otherwise. That not forcing is actually a method, a deliberate way of acting, not an excuse to stop acting. We'll get to exactly how that works in a moment. And by the end, you'll see the one thing you're still gripping today that was never actually holding anything together, the grip you mistook for effort itself. But first, let's talk about your hands. Think about how tired your hands get when you hold something too tightly for too long. That's not just a hand problem, that's most of your life. You grip the outcome of a meeting, a relationship, tomorrow's plan, and you don't notice the ache until it's been there for years. Here's the paradox this video sits inside. The harder you force a living, unfolding thing, the more it pushes back. An old Taoist text put it plainly. The strong tree, rigid and full-armed against the wind, is the one marked for the axe. Flexibility survives. Force invites its own defeat. That's not just a metaphor about trees, that's about you. So if force fails, what's left? Nothing? That's the misreading, and it's worth clearing up right away. Wu Wei doesn't mean doing nothing. The old phrase for it is stranger and more precise. A passive virtue, not an active one. A method, not a retreat. Read that again. A method. The people described using it in the old texts weren't lying down. They had missions. They moved through the world, made decisions, finished tasks. What changed wasn't whether they acted, it was how the acting felt from the inside. Less clenched, less like a fight. This is the part most people skip past, and it's the whole hinge of the video. Wu Wei is a technique for acting, not an excuse for not acting. Here's where the idea stops being abstract. Picture water against a wall. Water is the softest thing you can name. It takes the shape of whatever holds it. It has no fixed form. It never resists. And yet, nothing wears down stone the way water does. Nothing gets through the firm and the strong the way water does. It isn't stronger than the wall. It simply refuses to fight the wall on the wall's terms. The old text says water's real excellence is quieter still. It settles, without straining, into the low place everyone else avoids. Not fighting for the high ground, not fighting at all. And somehow, over time, it's the wall that changes shape. Now let's be honest about the objections sitting in the back of your mind. Doesn't this just sound like a nice word for giving up? If you stop gripping the outcome, aren't you just not caring anymore? Isn't flow with it what people say right before they abandon their responsibilities, their goals, the people counting on them? This is a fair challenge, and the philosophy doesn't earn your trust by dodging it. A person who stops trying isn't practicing Wu Wei. They're just quitting and borrowing better language for it. So where's the actual line between the two? That distinction is the whole answer, and it's more specific than you'd expect. There's an old story about a man slipping down a cliffside in the dark. He catches a branch, clings to it for hours in pure agony, certain that letting go means death. Eventually, his fingers give out. He falls, 6 inches, onto solid ground he couldn't see. The suffering was never the fall, it was the grip. Now put a real mission next to that story. An official in an old Chinese text sent on a task he can't refuse, terrified of failing at it. The text doesn't tell him to stop caring about the task. It tells him that peace, whether he succeeds or not, belongs only to those who've stopped white-knuckling the result. He still has to go. He just doesn't have to strangle the outcome to get there. This isn't only for cliffs and crises. It shows up anywhere you're skilled at something. Try to consciously force a word you've forgotten, and it jams tighter the harder you chase it. Then it surfaces the second you stop trying. William James noticed the same thing in people mid-transformation. Something in them had been quietly assembling itself below conscious effort, and the moment it was ready, the only right move was to stop steering. James described it as a kind of hands-off surrender, the sense that whatever was forming inside a person simply had to arrive on its own, unforced. That's Wu Wei, with no incense, no mountain retreat. Just a craftsman's hand finally trusting the motion it already knows. Widen this out, and it stops being a technique you reach for in emergencies. It becomes how you hold entire days. Not gripping the morning before it happens, not refighting yesterday's decision at 2 a.m. James called the shift from tense self-responsibility to something like equanimity the most remarkable change a person can go through. And the strange part is how it usually arrives. Not by doing more, by relaxing and simply setting the weight down. That's worth asking yourself honestly. What's the one thing you're still gripping today that you could just set down? Not abandon, just stop clenching. You might answer that for yourself in the comments before you even finish this video. Go back to the line and the knot from the start. One version rams straight through, snags, tightens its own trap, fights the wood grain like an enemy. The other follows the same grain around the knot and comes out the other side faster, whole, having surrendered nothing. It was never the weaker line. It only looked that way because bending around resistance is harder to see than smashing through it. That's the whole reframe this video was built to earn. What you release was never the goal you were chasing. It was only the grip you'd mistaken for effort. Let the line find its way. Tell me in the comments, what's the one thing you're still gripping too tight?